Welcome back again to another episode of Politics for the Culture. I'm your host, Senator Dwight Bullard. Once again, happy to be with you. As you know, we do politics for the culture. There's a politics for us, by us. We want to make sure that we kind of unpack and unravel all the different questions and concerns that the communities have as it relates to small p politics. That is, levels of engagement all the way up through lobbying and how folks should vote and everything in between. We, of course, always want to bring on guests that have a unique perspective from the vantage point of the work that they do. Today is no different. Coming to us live from the road is none other than a good friend of mine, none other than Mr. Aaron McKinney, who is coming to us via both his mobile phone and he is mobile at the same time. So shout out to you, brother Aaron McKinney. I hope you are pulled over and you are safe. We don't want you driving and interviewing at the same time there, brother.
Absolutely, man. I'm being responsible. The phone is currently on the dashboard, so we're all good, man. But I definitely appreciate the invitation to come and speak with y'all this evening.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. As you can see, he's very crisp and clean right now, but he is born and raised in the county of Dade. And
Hey,
part of what we first want to talk about, though, is we're in an election year, 2022. It's what I'm hearing from a lot of folks who are out here on the street is like, I don't really do politics. I don't engage in politics. I don't, kind of the same things we've heard for a long time. So I would love for you to kind of give a perspective on, from just dude growing up round the way, what is the thing that got you involved in politics? What was the catalyst, pardon the pun, that got you involved in politics?
well, it was actually Catalyst at the time being Catalyst Miami. No, man. So when I originally went off to undergrad, which is an interesting story and it kind of almost like a full circle moment considering the work I do now. But when I first went off to undergrad after finishing high school here in Miami, I went up to do architecture. And what folks may have thought like it was more so an idea to make a killing, which I knew was not going to be the case. I think there's always been this burning desire to have like a larger impact on community, and I think because I had gone to school in different areas, I thought, maybe naive at the time, that the pathway to doing so in an improving area was, being a part of trying to create beautiful spaces. And if you can create beautiful spaces, you can somehow have a larger impact on community. And somehow it took some time off after that through some financial issues, but I found my way back into school with a new focus after I spent 2 years doing an AmeriCorps program called Public Allies. And I mean that program like gave me it was basically an apprenticeship program or an apprenticeship program for those that are budding leaders in community, what they call new leaders for new times. And I did a 10-month stint at a nonprofit working directly under the executive director, providing direct service to community, doing programming, life skill workshops for families, and then doing some on the ground, like facilitating community dialogues and discussion, kind of really digging into the nitty gritty of issues that we face in our community. And so it was that exposure that kind of got me to really see, the root causes of a lot of issues that exist within our spaces that we occupy. And then beyond that, just beginning to see, as I begin involved in the nonprofit world, you tend to also rub shoulders with a lot of the local leadership, the elected officials, and you get to understand like the immense amount of power and authority that these folks have when it comes to having impact on, creating better spaces, creating better communities, providing more programming and needed services. And so I went back to school after that from AmeriCorps scholarship, and I ended up becoming a poli sci major. And one of the things that really stuck with me in one of my first classes as a poli sci undergrad was one of my favorite professors' his definition of politics, and that was, it's about the process of determining who gets what, when, where, and why. And when simplified in like such basic terms, because it constantly it gets messy and convoluted when we kind of talk about it and the different commentary and all the stuff we see on TV. But when you break it down to that, like bare minimum definition, I say to myself, like, well, how could I not be involved given what I've seen, what I've experienced, and now with that better understanding of the power and authority of local leadership. And so it was at that point, man, it all just began to click and align. And it went from, again, doing the nonprofit work, putting my studies in the political space, and then trying to see how I can begin to volunteer and make some kind of impact to get good people elected, because I understood that it's solid leadership that's going to determine whether or not the people that need the most get exactly what they need and deserve in order to continue to excel and to help their kids and their families do the same.
That's what's up. I mean, as I came to know you, you were working campaigns, you were trying to get folks elected, so it kind of directly dovetailed into the work that you were doing. Like, kind of twofold question, right? One is, what, coming from that poli-sci experience, that academic experience, to like wanting to work on a campaign, what makes you take that leap? Was it just kind of a natural occurrence, or was it something that you thought about and you said, all right, I want to actually engage around, kind of like direct interactive politics, whether it be presidential or county commission or what have you?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I mean, like I said before, it was just more so understanding the impact and the role these folks play in determining the livelihood of the folks in our communities, man. And so it was at that time I just, again, so happened to be meeting some of the right people at the same time. And I just happened to land into a volunteer role because, again, the different spaces I was running in, doing my nonprofit work, doing my community engagement, I had a chance to meet, at the time, it was State Senator Frederica Wilson, um, who was at that point gearing up for a congressional campaign. And she was someone I admired, someone who I felt was, leadership that we needed in our community. And so, that was the idea, to finally jump in the first time to kind of get my feet wet. And like, once I got engaged in that process, again, understanding the impact of leadership, whenever I was inspired by a candidate to want to lend my services, I continued to do so. And it was at that time you and I connected because, fast forward, that was the 2010 cycle where I actually connected with Congresswoman Wilson. Well, again, then state senator. By 2012 rolls around, I'm back on the ground, and now I'm working for the man with the funny name running for re-election, named Barack Obama. Kind of doing a lot of that same community organizing with the whole premise of, again, getting good people elected that we're going to have a more positive impact on our communities, our state, our country. And that was just always the focus, man. If I felt like, for the most part, these are folks that are aligned with my values, my beliefs, and I feel like, they're going to be a value add to the work that, some of us are doing on the ground. And, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and get involved and do what I can to help that person get elected.
No doubt. So
I think that answers your question.
It did. But fast forward to 2012 and beyond, right? You had the now opportunity to work inside in both state government and county government, right? Like, for folks who are reluctant to kind of engage in that process, or scared, or just fearful or overwhelmed by this idea, kind of put it in layman's terms why it's important to be part of that inside collaborative effort, to like be in there trying to shape policy and kind of working to make that happen, especially as a young Black male inside government. Like, why is it important for you to be in those spaces?
Well, I mean, I'll start by saying the particular spaces that I did occupy at the time, I felt was important. And that being, again, I happen to serve with this pretty awesome man in the state legislature. He was a state senator at the time. He's kind of been a big brother since, Senator Bullard. And had a chance to work on the county commission with Barbara Jordan. But those two particular roles were important to me because as I began to grow and learn in this process, I understood the importance of local policy. That everything is pretty much local in terms of that has a direct, again, impact on our day-to-day. But I also think it was important for for others to see me in that space that look like me, that are aspiring to get involved. But also, like, we come in with a very unique perspective that we need to bring to the table. And that's not saying that, that just because I'm a black man that I come in with a specific experience. It's more so about the experiences that I've had, the experiences that we kind of reflect on and we bring to the table when thinking through policy implications, be it for the person that we're working with or someone that's profiting legislation that we need to put a perspective out there on larger impact. The more diversity, the more engagement you have of folks from different walks in life, we kind of make sure we actually create better final products as opposed to, kind of going in with a limited perspective on the larger implications or impact of policy decisions that are made. So I think that diversity is always important. And again, in the way in which I engage on a local level is extremely important because nothing has more of an impact on day-to-day life like local government.
I hear that. So it's interesting. You start off in architecture, end up with poli-sci. Now you work in housing, kind of like the best of both worlds, if you will, right? What gets you now involved in housing? What's the thing that now, and one, of course, add context. Of course, housing is literally the number one topic on the top of mind for most people at this point, right? You got rising rent costs around the country. You have, 3-bedroom homes going for $500,000, when people still out here earning less than $30,000 a year. And yet you want to specifically kind of focus in on affordability, right? Why is that important for you to kind of make that a focus at this point in time, and especially coming from Miami-Dade County?
Well, I will say what initially got me interested and still continues to keep me interested is just lived experience. I always tell folks, and when I reflect on my tenure with you, I always explain how I was really adamant about doing my best to live in the district because I thought it was important to be amongst the folks that we were representing. And one of the biggest struggles that I had, and this was this is what initially exposed me to some of the housing issues. I'm not saying this is necessarily covering the whole gamut, but one particular situation I was dealing with was I had the desire to live in the district in which I represented, more specifically the neighborhood I was representing in our district. And the two issues I would constantly run into is that one, I made too little to actually rent in the open market, and I will say even then beyond that, there was also very limited market rate housing stock available in the low income areas that we represented. But then on top of that, I also made too much to qualify for subsidies, and so I found myself in limbo a lot and trying to figure out like how do I survive, and it was frustrating because I'm like, okay, here I am, not just working any old regular schmegular job. Like I am, an extension of a state elected official, making trips across the state to Tallahassee, representing this man in different places of the county. And here I am struggling, to find somewhere to live, right? As a college degree working class professional in South Florida. And I struggled, and it was super hard. And it was also during my time in your office that the issue began to be presented to me about the whole notion of workforce housing, given the fact of the issue that we had in Monroe County, where they were kind of struggling with a very similar issue on a larger scale, where essential service personnel were essentially looking at, basically locating themselves in the southern tip of Miami-Dade County and being bussed into Monroe because they couldn't afford to live there, although they were essential service personnel. And so it was a number of those experiences that got me to see the issue. I took a particular interest in workforce housing again because I always thought about, again, the folks that are that can't afford the market but making too much money, and now they create what's called this missing middle. And I was like, well, what do you do about talent retention there? How do you convince folks to stay when they can't live here? And so that was pretty much the impetus for me to really want to dig deeper into the subject matter. And to take the path that I've taken ever since to kind of find a way to, how do we continue to provide programming and subsidies or find ways to address, working class and low income community members of our community to make sure they can actually, afford to live comfortably and with dignity. And more so, how do we, and then on top of that, how do we create more, socioeconomic diverse communities and spaces, particularly communities of color, that, we don't necessarily have, our middle class folks boxed in one area, and then our, low income, or, our public housing, or, individuals living in this area all separated. But how do we then create a holistic, diverse community that looks like us, that encompasses all of these different housing tenure types? And so that's kind of been the motivation for me going into this. And steady trying to figure out new ways to, either from the work that we do as practitioners within the affordable and workforce housing space, to create more creative projects, or to pass along, policy ideas from our experiences that, we think would help in helping in the production of producing more units, or producing more affordable units, to, again, allow folks to be able to, live in this place they love with dignity.
Yeah, I mean, your story is powerful. I mean, and it's the struggle of so many folks, each and every day trying to make ends meet while still trying to keep a roof over their head. So definitely appreciate your perspective and insight. And it's good that the folks watching this can know that there's somebody on the inside trying to work to solve some of these problems that are just seem systemic and pervasive, no doubt. A little levity, of course, housing being a very important subject, but recently you've decided to, venture into the fashion industry a little bit, right? So, you've developed a line that kind of celebrates these historic Black communities that you've had a chance to experience in your time in Miami. What inspired you to now, get into A, fashion, but B, make it about the celebration of Black communities?
No doubt. So it's funny you asked me this, because I have been slacking because it's one of those questions I get a lot. And I had teed up a number of posts to kind of really talk about, when I say posts, to my various social media networks, and really talk about what the motivation was behind this. And so yes, I've gotten a reputation for being somewhat of a snazzy dresser sometimes. So I think maybe the fashion bug was always there. I've always had a thing for hats and headpieces and whatnot. But the motivation behind this was really just a legit, like genuine love for Miami. When I say that, I mean all the Dade county line to county line, because I've had the chance to experience like so much rich culture, so many amazing people, and I really have had a chance to like legit spend significant time in all facets of Dade County. And so it's that love that kind of inspired me, but then like the driving force was like this burning desire to actually do something for the areas that oftentimes are not spoken about when we think Miami, right? When folks, come and they come for vacation, they want to hang out. It's the other side of the bridge, right? Or it's downtown, it's Brickell, it's Miami Beach, but not realizing just a few feet, a few yards away from that. And in the case of downtown, a few feet away, there's so many rich stories, culture, history that exists in historically Black communities in Dade County. And so I just wanted to take a moment to really like uplift and reflect on those spaces, to put those names out there, to identify by the ways that the names that we know them as locals, as the indigenous of these communities, and to kind of like put on notice that, although Miami is rapidly changing, and I think that was part of my motivation for it too, when I was, working on one of these massive redevelopment projects. And even beyond that space, I'm looking at the larger Liberty City community that I've watched over the last maybe decade now go through this transformation. And I just felt the burning desire to give folks a chance to represent and say, hey, man, like, we're still here. Our home is still here. We're still here. And the place lives in us. And so, again, by default, although the landscape may change, like, this is still us, right? And so that was really the motivation. Again, I'm a proud product of Liberty City. I rep my home as much as I can whenever I can. And I know if I felt that same passion and desire to, shout out my hood, so to speak, I'm pretty sure folks would latch on and want to do the same, man. I mean, to be honest, man, it was one of those pandemic projects that I sat there one day and I pitched the idea to a friend. He didn't bite on it. And I was like, well, to hell with it. I'll try it. And I tried it out one weekend where I printed up the first two neighborhoods. That was Liberty. I designed caps for Liberty City, which said the city as opposed to Liberty City, because that's what us locals know it by. and I printed up some hats for Carol City as opposed to Miami Gardens, taking it back to the old days before incorporation. And I'm not gonna lie, man, I printed those up one weekend and I sold out in less than 2 days. And I think I had over 30 caps that I had gotten printed up. And I said to myself, well, I mean, clearly there's an appetite here. Maybe this is something we should run with. And sure enough, man, the more we began to play with it, the more folks asked for the neighborhoods we represented, the more invitations we got to do little things here and there. And it's just something I think I want to continue to build upon to, again, just give us a chance to represent and highlight, our hoods, our homes, and folks get a chance to put real faces to these communities that we kind of oftentimes brush over and don't really give the proper respect for that added flavor that it really does bring to create Miami as we see it today.
No doubt. And I appreciate you showing love to down south as well. I still got to pin you down and get the Heights hat.
I got you.
I know you got other neighborhoods on deck, Ghouls, and so many others that deserve their love and respect as well, man. So thank you for doing that. Where can folks find you? As a website, social media, if they want to get at the hat line.
Yeah, so it's the Crib. So the name of the website is the name of the clothing line is the Crib Clothing Co. Of course, as locals from Miami, we reference Miami as the Crib. So it was very, very intentional on giving it a local, hyper local name. But the website is thecribclothingco.com, and all of the social media taglines are exactly the same. The Crib Clothing Co. So if you look it up on Facebook or Instagram, you should be able to find us. And of course, the website is the best place to take orders. But if you got to hit me up directly, you can inbox me on Instagram, and I'll take care of it that way too. But we just want to get it out there again. We just think it's a beautiful thing, man, to go out and just see folks repping their homes. I mean, I've had a lot of encounters at different parties and socials, and just got a lot of positive feedback about it. So we're definitely trying to continue to make this thing happen, make it grow, and find new products that we can give folks to go ahead and represent their homes, man. So we're really excited about it.
No doubt, no doubt. Before we let you leave, though, we know that you're in your vehicle right now. Would love to hear, before you got on the program today, what were the last 3 songs you were listening to that you were bumping in the vehicle? What are you listening to that's keeping you going?
The last couple of things I was listening to. So I'm not gonna lie. This past weekend, I found myself running through a Pusha T catalog. So so that being said, the last thing I played was Rock and Roll and Neck and Wrist by Pusha T and Jay-Z, and then Rock and Roll with Pusha T, Kid Cudi, and Pharrell and Kanye. So sorry, man. I know very aggressive form of music, but sometimes
listen, whatever works to keep you motivated, my brother. You know what I'm saying? Like listen, there are many folks who run through a whole slew of dope boy music before they go into work.
Wake up and say my morning
prayers. 9 to 5, so it's not a problem.
Right. I might listen to a little Yolanda Adams in the morning, and then next track I might be playing a little maybe some gunplay or something like that. I don't know, man. It all depends on the mood.
I love it. I'm here for it, man. Aaron, thank you again for coming on the show, pulling over to come on the show, and we appreciate you. Again, dropping those jewels, man, so folks understand. Again, just be mindful. Folks who look like you are out here putting in the work, both in the housing industry and creating new pathways for economic growth. So you have 2 opportunities, right? You can rely on somebody like Aaron to be an expert on affordable housing, but also you can support a Black business. And, that's the duality of our people. And so I want to thank you for being on the show there, my brother. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, man. And I'll take a moment to say thank you for everything, bro. I appreciate and love you, man, always.
No doubt, man. Thank you, my brother. Once again, Politics for the Culture is here to bring you unique voices that are trying to do everything that we talk about doing, right? We can't just talk about it. We have to be about it. And so we want to make sure that we are pushing out folks for the culture that are really at the forefront of tackling some of the most pervasive issues in our community, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be economic development, whether it be, direct access to the ballot box. We want to make sure that you as the viewer know that there are folks out here making sure that there is politics for the culture. Thank you once again for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next time.